we've been working on the last couple of weeks. Yeah, Allison.
Just a question about kind of the organization of the paper.
Yes.
Because we already did part 1, do we have to keep the first frame, the first analysis in like that first spot, or could we reorder them if we wanted to?
Huh, that's interesting. I think you could reorder them, but just make sure that it's very clear to me that this was frame 1, right? So are you thinking that one of them sort of leads to the next, which leads to the next, and so that frame might go later?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe. Okay. I think usually in the past I've seen frame 1 usually go in the first spot just because sort of the sequential order of how we produce the paper. But if it makes more logical sense for the paper, feel free to switch it around. And actually, let me just make sure that everybody got my email that I've extended the paper deadline to 15 pages. And that's partly to accommodate people who had longer part 1s. And it's also partly to accommodate the fact that I think I saw how many of you were struggling with being able to stick to the paper limit for part 1, and I'm imagining that same kind of issue will come up with the final paper as well. So hopefully with 15 pages that will accommodate for that. Dimitri.
And like the first paper, if we go a little bit over 15, is that okay?
Yes, yes, so a little bit. So a little bit is okay. I'd probably give you leeway up to 16, but you know, multiple pages over the page limit, that's when I'm starting to think, probably could have done it more succinctly, okay? Chris.
Just to clarify about that part, being one of the people whose first papers was almost the length of the final one.
Yes, there was some of that.
I assume, I mean, we're not touching the first frame, so I know you said 15 pages, but will you still look at, for those of us who maybe our first one was 12 or 13 pages, if we're over 15, it won't be that tragic?
Yes, I'll go back and look at frame 1 to see how much of the over is frame 1.
Okay.
Sure. Yes.
I'm not sure what I need to write in cross-frame analysis. Do I need to focus on organizational problem only on the cross-frame analysis, or do I need to expand what I learned from those theories? Or
Yes.
I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I think it's okay to focus on the problem. So the idea is going to be that, and this was one of the clarifications that we made last week that I want to make sure is crystal clear, that so the very first paper, some of you seem to kind of choose your problem based on the theory, but what I'm going to expect to see in the final paper is that you defined the problem, right? And the problem was based on the evidence that you collected. And then you use 3 different theories to highlight that problem. And then the cross-frame analysis will then compare and contrast the usefulness of the 3 frames in illuminating the problem and understanding the problem and yielding recommendations for the problem. So you'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each frame with regard to each other. So how, let's say this, frame 3 really solves the weaknesses of frame 1. Giving the reader sort of an overall picture of how these frames work together. And you can even say things like, in the end, when you sum it all up, what part of the problem isn't explained by any of the frames, right? Those are some of the kinds of questions that I would ask. And in fact, one of the things that I've seen be really helpful to students in the past is, if you start with the problem and then you kind of make a table of, frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and these are, let's say, the 4 main aspects of the problem, which of these frames helps explain which part of this problem, and sort of why and how, and where do you see frames overlapping, where do you see them being distinct? Jesse.
Would you want us to include this table, or just kind of use it for our own assistance in writing here?
I've never seen anyone include it.
So it's more like
it's more sort of just to guide your thinking. But if you found it to be particularly useful and I'm open.
Okay.
I was just going to say, the book does that a lot. It will do strengths
Yes.
and weaknesses, so it kind of would naturally flow for us that same way somebody.
That's really true. The book is structured in that way, isn't it? Yeah. Dimitri.
I think I asked you this question in email, but I just think it might be relevant to bring up for everyone. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the cross-frame analysis and then the next part, which is coming up with suggestions,
Yes.
can we sort of combine those sections at all? Like, I mean, I think that the suggestions kind of come with the
From the-
cross-frame analysis. Otherwise, I feel like if I'm just doing cross-frame analysis without the suggestions, I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Yes, absolutely. It's fine to include, you know, when I think about the way these three overlap, it's clear that these are the recommendations. Yeah. But I think that there's sometimes, it's okay to do it either way. So whatever way your mind naturally organizes it, that's fine. So if you would rather have a separate recommendation section, that's fine as well.
I think that also helps with the page limit as well.
Oh, yes, if you combine them. Yeah.
I wasn't here last week, so sorry if you went over this, but how are the presentations being divvied up? Who's going next week?
Yes, okay, so, and actually, you all are gonna have to remind, so we divvied it up based on if your problem is based more internally for the organization. So for example, among staff, looking at hierarchy or policy or something that's happening within the unit. So internal is going 1 week, and then external, so relating, let's say, between two offices, or your office and students, or your office and the broader environment. Any of those kinds of problems would be on another day. So let's get a sense. How many people think that, so next week I think is internal?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. How many people think they're going on next week for internal? Great. And external, the second week.
I
Yeah.
thought it was, maybe I'm crazy, but I thought it was split. Yeah.
I think we switched
Yeah.
it, and then we switched
And then we
it back.
switched it back. So I think that it's internal is next week because there are fewer people because you're going to teach the other frames.
Right, internal
And then
first and then
external.
external. Is that, I think that's what I said, right?
Yeah.
But then
Okay.
you said there was more
No,
internal, so they might go to the fall.
So sorry, external was next week because there are fewer people.
We had briefly discussed that, but then we realized that it was actually due to certain people that needed a specific date,
Right,
as
okay.
opposed, right. So I think it is internal next week, external the following.
I like that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Is that, do we need to recount? Were there a lot of people who were confused about that? Or was that mostly what people thought? Yes? Good? Okay, great. It seems to be about half and half anyways, so I think that's cool. Okay, wonderful. Any other questions about, oh, this is really important. So you all know how much I care about assessment, right? Very much care about assessment. So the course evaluations this term are different than typical. So usually I get to have you as a captured audience and divvy my survey so that I make sure that all of you complete it and it's not mandated at all. So obviously it's not supposed to be mandated, but since I have you all, it feels a lot more like you might actually do it. I'm concerned that since it's now online, fewer people are going to fill it out. So I would just like to really encourage you to please, please, please fill out the online course evaluations. It will really help me to improve my teaching. I made a lot of adjustments on this class based on the feedback from last year. So your feedback will go, believe me, directly into use when I, change this class. It also has a bearing on my faculty evaluation. And so in order to facilitate this, I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes of the last class to have you use your devices to do this. And if you've already done it at home, you can just leave ahead of time. Okay, so the motivation is do it ahead of time, and then you'll be done early and you can go celebrate being done with the semester ahead of time, okay? By 10 minutes. All right. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about motivation and groups, and I'm really hoping that Socrative is wanting to work for me this time. This is the one I need. Okay, great. So I actually tried to make Socrative work before, and it wasn't happy with me. So let's give it a whirl again. Oops. Maybe I used. If you all can try and see if you get in, let me know. Because I tried several times and it was not happy with me. Ah, beautiful.
By popular demand.
That's right. Thank you all. Okay, great. So I think we've got 21, and I think we have more than 21, but we're close. Anybody having trouble getting in? No? Right in today? Okay. So we're in 960642. Okay, great. All right. So, what is this?
So maybe because we already have like the choices on screens.
I wonder if we've done that in the past. Do you know what? I'm going to try Firefox instead. All right, last attempt. Okay, this is looking more like what we need. Great. Beautiful. Okay, so which of the following are not, or it really should say is not, an example of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? A, seeing a strong reward for good work. B, feeling safe at one's workplace. C, a strong sense of colleagueship. D, being pushed to learn in one's position, or none of the above. So which of these is not an example of Maslow? Did something happen? No.
I just laughing at my face.
Oh,
I mean,
That's
face.
okay. Only got 9 responding. Still waiting on you. Okay, so looks like we're still waiting on a few, but we have an overwhelming response on D. So can somebody explain to me why D is not an example of Maslow? Chris?
I can say why I thought it wasn't. Because it says being pushed to learn in one's position. I mean, if I remember from the reading, the hierarchy of needs is about the individual, and to me this was some sort of external factor pushing the individual to learn in a position which isn't part of, it's not fulfilling the needs of the individual, it's fulfilling the needs of the person pushing them.
Interesting. Okay. Yes, I can definitely see that. Other thoughts? Was it the word pushed that made people exclude D?
Yeah, I think if it was like a desire to learn more in one's position for some kind of like fulfillment, like personal fulfillment, then I think it would have been different. But I think I had the same reasoning as Chris.
Great. Other thoughts? I really will never invest in a multiple choice test. Never. This is so fascinating to me. So I have to say that The only one that got none was the one that I intended. So, but I definitely see why, as both of you just stated, you would pick D. Because you're absolutely right that Maslow is a theory of needs, which is much more supposed to be an intrinsic kind of theory, right? So this wording is really poor. It's poor wording. Yes, Evan.
But isn't learning like, I don't know, to me, the whole push thing, I get where that terminology can kind of confuse, but isn't that something that we as humans strive to do regardless? So wouldn't that technically be part of maybe like self-actualization?
Ah, yes. Okay, so that.
And we're constantly looking again for that idea of reward, of knowing that hey, you did a good job, but so that's why I put none of the above. It was obviously wrong.
No, I think one of the things that's useful about this is that I think, I'm much more interested in your reasoning and whether you, so everybody, those people who just described their reasoning for D, that makes sense for me, and Evan, your reasoning why you would include A, where you see the reward, so if it's an intrinsic reward, that could possibly be part of self-actualization, right? I think the way that I was conceptualizing seeing a strong reward for good work.
Like a bonus?
Right, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, that's good for the person too.
Yeah, right.
It's soul also.
Yeah, but perhaps that could have been more, so we're sort of distinguishing needs theory versus process theory here, right? Okay, Amy.
And under esteem needs, they do talk about recognition, which maybe, strong reward for one's good work could be a form of recognition.
Yes. Yes, that's an excellent point. That's absolutely true. So Amy, were you in the none of the above camp? Yeah. Other kinds of thoughts? Yeah, I really like how you interpreted the sort of external versus internal pieces here, right? And how you can, in some ways, you can make a reward fit either external or internal. And similarly, the learning, even though I was sort of looking at that as an organization that was supporting growth, right? But that could be, so the idea of pushed is really more extrinsic, right? So that's interesting. I appreciate your perspectives on that. Okay, so let's do the next one. So let's look at a process theory. So which is not an example of Vroom's expectancy theory? A, if I try really hard, I know I can perform well in this position. B, if I perform well in this position, I am sure to get a promotion. C, I really want a promotion. D, my boss really wants me to have a promotion. Or E, none of the above. Got a war going on, C's and D's. There's 3 more. You could win, D. You could do it. No? All right. Got a couple question marks. Okay, so let's hear from the C's and the D's. C. Why is I really want a promotion not an example of Vroom's expectancy theory? go to D's first, perhaps? Okay, why is D? My boss really wants me to have a promotion. Not in part, Evan.
I think it's very, again, it goes back to that whole idea of the person and their internal wants. So I feel like everything else is really, employee driven, whereas my boss really wants me to have a promotion is not.
Yes. So I agree with you in the distinction about the focus of the question, but interestingly, process theories are supposed to be about intrinsic or extrinsic?
Yeah.
Extrinsic, right? But perhaps it's the kind of extrinsic that's different here, right? So what are the three components of Vroom's expectancy theory? Help us to distinguish this. How about this? I'll give you the label. You can help me to remember what it means. Okay. So we have expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. What are we talking about with expectancy? Was this hidden? Yeah.
I expect that if I do right, I'm going to get what I want.
Right. Yes. Okay. So, and I'm going to tweak it just a little bit, okay? Because it's more. I expect that if I work as hard as I can achieve the performance result. Okay. So, because get what I want could be either a performance result or reward. One of the things that Vroom's theory does is it distinguishes performance result versus reward. So actually, what you just did was sort of combine both expectancy and instrumentality. So expectancy is, if I work really hard, I can do a good job. All right. So the sense that I have the capabilities, I have the esteem, I have the knowledge and the skills that I need to do a good job if I really work hard. Right. So that would be expectancy. I can expect to do well if I work hard. Instrumentality would say, if I do well, I'll get rewarded. So the first part, expectancy, is about belief in one's ability to perform. And then instrumentality is about the connection between performance and reward. And then the third part, valence, is about, yes?
The institution's thoughts on your ability to be promoted or to achieve that reward. So that would be, my boss really wants me to have a promotion, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. I actually think of valence more being about how desirable the reward is. So I think it's more a sense of, let's say the reward is a promotion. How desirable is that promotion? Or let's say the reward is a salary increase. Or the reward is simply prestige in the department, right? All of those could be rewards, and for an individual, any of those rewards would be perhaps more or less incentivizing. So a higher valence would be a better reward for that individual. Dimitri.
Well, that's what I was thinking that was valence. That's why I thought C was right. The B person. So I also thought that D it would have been the same. Because if the boss wants that person to get a promotion, doesn't that promotion for the other person have a reward for the boss? Like if that's what the boss wants.
Interesting.
Like maybe that somehow helps the boss out a lot.
So D is valence for the boss.
Right. Whereas B, I thought I am sure to get a promotion was like assuming that they would definitely get a promotion, and that they might if they do really well, but I thought that was like, I'm sure to get a promotion. I didn't remember there being something about like an absolute in there,
So B is really trying to get at the idea of instrumentality, right? So if I perform well, I'm gonna get that reward, right? There's not as much, there's a clarity about the fact that good performance gets a reward. That's really what sort of instrumentality is about. But this is interesting with D. I think of valence, one of the important characteristics of valence is that it it really requires rewards to be individualized, right? So the idea is that if you have, okay, the only reward is a promotion, and 15% of your staff don't care about promotion, then valence is low and your reward structure doesn't matter for those 15% of employees, right? So I think part of valence, which is why D was the answer I was looking for, part of valence is that it really is individually driven, as opposed to, you know, the boss thinking that that connection exists. It's much more that that connection exists for the individual. The connection between basically wanting that reward.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, so I picked C because it seems like there's no effort involved. I mean, I really want to win $1 million, but if we're not, you know, working towards it, so that was the part that kind of kept me from that answer is, you know, there seems to be some sort of drive that's missing.
Yes, okay. So, you know, and again, I think this is a really good example because I think I hear from each of you that you're understanding the theory, but that certain aspects of this question don't match your understanding. So C really only deals with valence, but doesn't deal with instrumentality and does not deal with expectancy, right? So, so it does deal with an aspect of Froom's expectancy theory, but that alone would not be an example of expectancy theory. So I think that's a really good point. And in fact, that's actually true of A and B as well, right? So with A, if I try really hard, I know I can perform well in this position, well great, but if you don't care about performance or there's no reward associated with that, it doesn't follow expectancy theory, right? And with B, if I perform well in this position, I'm sure to get a promotion. Well, if you don't care about that promotion, or you don't think you can perform well, that wouldn't follow expectancy theory, right? So A, B, and C are aspects of expectancy theory, but none of those actually make up expectancy theory at all. Getting a sense of definitely understanding of Maslow, sort of moving into an understanding here. Is that true? Yeah? Okay, good. Well, let's do the next thing. See if we can pull this understanding a little further. Okay? Pick it apart a little bit. All right, so. Okay, so I'm going to hand out a survey that I'd like you to take for the next 5 minutes or so. It's a pretty short survey. Huh? The different fonts are putting in? Really? Yeah. Is there a problem with fonts?
It's not a big deal.
Oh, sorry. We did, if you know Myers-Briggs, I'm 100% N, so I don't see that at all, which is very funny for a data person.
It's interesting because I'm also
Interesting. Sorry. Personality theory, big picture versus forest versus trees. And actually, you might remember that from the decision-making class that we had. Are you excited that I figured out how to get whiteboards here? Like the second one. You ready?
You want to mention the font issue, or something before this Tuesday's leadership course. And we just talked about the fact that he does this on purpose to people. He's trying to see if someone's going to be a good leader or not, and see how they adapt and how they're able to deal with change. So he purposely tries to annoy people, like things like that. Interesting.
There is one item that's supposed to be a different font color. It's purposefully a different font color. Fix that. Okay.
Can I ask a logistical question about the survey?
Yeah.
For question number 4, there's kind of a two-part question there, and those answers can be fundamentally different.
Yes, they can. You can have separate answers.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. If you know anything about survey design, ignore this survey. It is not meant to be a valid, reliable survey. Okay, I would like to blank. Oh, I like to blank. Projector. Ah. Okay. Oh, don't worry about the cases on the back. Just fill out the front survey. We'll work on those later. Okay. Has everybody filled it out? All right, so I'd like to ask for at least probably two guinea pigs to share their answers with the class as an example of how we're going to analyze this. And for those of you who, well, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, anybody who would be willing to share their, Allison, thank you. Okay, so.
Well, I don't, you don't have to tell me if I'm going to be a good example because I don't have like a full-time, like permanent position.
You'll be a good example.
Okay, good.
Don't worry. All right, so how satisfied are you? 3. Okay. How motivated do you feel?
4.
How likely are you to stay?
2.
This is the one perhaps that might be a little different, right?
No, it's the same.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
3.
Okay, 3. That 3 is for supervisor and for colleagues?
Yep.
Also 3. Okay. And how 5? How comfortable are you?
2.
2? 6?
2.
2? 7?
4.
4? 8?
4.
4? 9?
4.
Okay. 10?
4.
Okay. 11?
3.
12?
2.
13?
2.
Okay, interesting. 14?
2.
Oh wow, okay. Sorry, we're gonna go over here. 15?
3.
16?
4.
Okay. And 17?
3.
Okay. All right. So this is really interesting. And just to give you an idea, so basically the way these are organized is that, so these are outcomes, right? So these are motivational outcomes. Okay. Then we have 4 through 11. 4 through 10. So here to here, really being, these are going to be more like the ERG or Maslow. So we're talking more sort of the needs theories here. And then down here we have process theory, where we have 11, 12, 13, 14. These ones are all, so this is fascinating because look what we have here. These are your ones where you're low, right? So, so here we have growth. We've got expectancy theory. Okay, and then these are other forms of process theories. 15 is the equity theory. We've got 16 and 17 being more related to job characteristics and goal theory. Okay. So let's just take a second to look at the pattern in the numbers. Ah, so it's also interesting here, huh? All right, so what do we see? What do we see in terms of what relates to what and the patterns that we see in the numbers? Any thoughts? Oh, and actually 7 we need to reverse score, right? I think, yeah. Ah. All right, and so so we have 5, 6, and 7 would all be sort of basic needs, right? So this is, if you're looking at ERG theory, this is existence, right? We're talking about hunger, we're talking about safety, we're talking about our physical space, right? So she's got really low on existence.
Barely surviving.
Right. Interest. Oh, this is so great. I'm so excited about this. Okay. So interestingly, where we see the higher scores is in the growth aspect, right? So we're looking at how much you're feeling challenged, how much are you learning, is this position a good stepping stool for your ultimate career? So in terms of growth, and just as a reminder, the ERG theory maps directly onto Maslow. So E, the existence theory, is about safety, the sort of psychological, physiological kinds of needs. R, relationships, maps on, and then G, growth, maps on to the self-actualization and esteem. So she's got a combination of interesting things going on. One of the things that we notice when we look at the outcomes is, first of all, we're seeing some variation across the outcomes, right? It's not like we've got all 2s or all 5s. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? So she's moderately satisfied, she feels pretty motivated, and she's pretty likely to leave. Did I see a hand? Why, let's take a look at the difference here. Why do you think that she might be, knowing what we know down here about the theories, right? Why do you think she might be highly motivated to do well, but perhaps more likely to leave and not that satisfied? Why is she motivated but not that satisfied? Yes, Chris?
I mean, there might not be, depending upon the work site or location, there may not be promotional opportunities or possibly for advancement there. So she's motivated to succeed for her own end, but not necessarily for the end of the organization.
Okay, so perhaps we're seeing some connection here to the process theory problem, right? So there's not a lot of, she perhaps, expects that she wants to do well, but then what, right? What does doing well mean? And do I care about the rewards that exist in my structure? That might influence here. Yeah. Okay, good. I definitely see this connection here. The other thing that we know interestingly, when we separate Maslow like this, or when we separate ERG like this, one of the things that's fascinating is that the basic needs help retain you. The growth aspects help you grow, right? So, so usually this is a little bit different than what we're seeing in this, right? No, this is exactly right. Okay, because her basic needs are not being met. So usually, if your basic needs are not met, you head to an environment where they are met, right? This says she's motivated. So the connection that I see here is this and this with this, right? So basic existence not met, reward structure not there, likely to leave, not that overall satisfied. But interestingly, a lot of growth potential internally, which means I want to do well. So in this case, you likely get an employee who does really a lot of good work for you for a short period of time, which is exactly what we're seeing in her data. Interesting. example. Who else? Great, thank you. All right, so 1, 3, 2, 3.
4,
Oh, okay, interesting. So we've got the, okay.
3,
3,
4,
5.
4, 4, 2, 2, 3, 5,
Oh.
4, 3, 3, 3.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry.
I'm on 13.
13,
3,
3,
3.
3. 15 is 4.
Okay. Go here.
3 and 4.
4. Okay. All right, let's separate these out. Okay, so we've got, this is satisfaction. This is motivated. This is staying. Then we have needs are here through, did we say 7? This is E. This is R. Okay. We have, this is G. Growth. Right? So we have existence. We've got growth here. Okay. And then let's look at the process down here. So we've kind of got room going on down here. This is room, expectancy theory, and then some other process theories over here. We've got equity. We've got goals theory. Okay. All right. So now that we've warmed up with that one, someone take us down to the patterns. Evan.
I mean, it's interesting, even just looking at the first 3, how she's staying, even though she's not very motivated and she's not even all that satisfied with her job.
Okay. Yes, that's true. But what do we know? What aspect? What is the greatest motivator just to stay? Not to do well, not to grow, but just to stay. What's the greatest motivator for that? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. In her list or in general?
Well, in general, but also applies in her list.
Oh, well, comfort and salary are the highest.
Yeah. So, is 10 is?
I was looking at 5 and 6.
5 and 6. Right, yes, existence. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about it. You're in a job, right? Your salary's pretty good, you know? Your comfort's pretty good. You're getting some good sleep. You live close to campus. They don't really ask you to do that much. You're probably going to stay there, right? You're getting paid well. You're having a good life, right? But, okay, and this is kind of interesting. So I should mention that 10 is actually a combination here. We'll come to 10 in a second. I understand why this one would be different. But so what we have going on here that's kind of interesting is, you know, if existence is pretty good. Now what is 7? What's going on? Oh.
Oh, I was
So-
off today, so I'm not that hungry or tired, but.
Huh?
I said I was off today, so I'm not hungry or tired, but.
But
If I would have been working.
you would have been hungry
I
and
would have
tired.
been tired.
Okay, interesting. So there's a little bit of a question mark here. But on the whole, we see the expected relationship there, right? We would expect that if my basic existence is taken care of, right, the lower levels of Maslow are taken care of, that I'm going to be more likely to stay. All right, so now let's take a look at these two. Sorry, I saw a hand. Chris.
For number 7, I mean, wouldn't a lower rating for 7 actually correlate with
Oh yeah,
a positive, right?
we forgot to reverse
yeah.
code.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Although you said that if you were working it, you might be tired.
I get what I'm doing.
See, cleaning data. So, all right. So now, so she's not that motivated. Somebody tell me from her data, and from what we know about the theories here, we've got growth pretty low. We've got room expectancy kind of moderate. Let's look at 10 and 11 because these are pretty high. So this is a good. So there's some kind of. This is part of growth mentality, but it's also part reward, right? And then how much do you want it to be? So, okay, interesting. So we've got, this is about valence, right? She really wants the reward. She really wants the reward. So, but the rest of, so she wants the reward, but it's not that available to her, right? So we know that from Vroom, she has to believe she can do it. If she doesn't, she has to think that she's going to achieve the reward, and she has to want the reward. She wants the reward, but the likelihood it's actually going to happen, not that high. Which means I'm not that motivated. Exactly. Right? Not that motivated. And also, I'm not really being sort of pushed to feel challenged or learn. So it's almost like the steps ahead look really good, but where she is right now. So the motivation can really nicely be explained by the combination of the growth and the expectancy theory down here. And then when we look at the combination of these two things, we get satisfaction. All right. Any questions about this? Was this helpful in understanding the theory?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Great. I have to say, this is the second year I've done this, and each year we can see the patterns. So I really anecdotally believe that these theories hold true in terms of motivation. I mean, it's actually pretty uncanny how we can sort of pick it apart here and see the result and the outcome. It's pretty amazing. Okay, great. So let's do a few case studies. I think, we've really gone over a lot of this. So yeah, we've distinguished needs theory versus process, right? We've got sort of unconscious needs and drives, more intrinsic motivation, and then process theory is about sort of combining those drives with the extrinsic processes of an organization. And we just talked about these needs theories. Okay, and you know what I'll do is I'll put up the description of the needs and the process theories to help you with your cases. Okay, so I'll put one up over here as well. So I'll come back to that, so don't worry. But so what I'd like to do is, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And do you think, so I'd like for this table to do case 1, the table in the back to do case 2, this table to do case 3, and these two tables to do case 4. So what you're going to do is read the case, and then let's just do the first part. We're going to use one need theory. You can decide to use either Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Hertzberg's model, which we haven't talked about much, but was in your reading. And like I said, I'll go ahead and put the PowerPoint slides up to kind of jog your memory. And the ERG theory to explain the employee's motivation level, satisfaction level, and likelihood of staying in the organization. So basically, we're looking at the top 3 and using a needs theory to explain the sort of top 3 that we did on the survey. And then the second question is, what would the theory that you're using say needs to happen to change and improve the level of satisfaction and motivation of that employee? So just the top one. We'll get to the process theory next. Any questions? All right, maybe take about 5-10 minutes. Interesting, I spelled existence wrong twice. Right?
You were like on a roll over there, so.
Was I?
audio discussion will be featured for this segment. Yes, it will.
Close and repeat next.
So, I was gonna say that the low satisfaction and innovation. I think what's missing in this is the process theory. That even though he says he has high motivation, there's no indicator to say that if he works hard, he's gonna get promoted. It seems like the position is there in the office, but it's not necessarily one that he could move into.
It also seems like the basic hierarchy of needs, like those existence level functions aren't being met. Like smells, it's hot or cold, he doesn't have a permanent location to be in. It sounds kind of crappy.
What exactly were we supposed to do? We can do both if you want. Want to start with the needs and then the
Yeah.
working environment.
Oh, I said I was gonna put up.
Using or cool, not smelly.
What about the fact that his background is in higher ed and nobody else does? Like, it feels like it can relate to him. Like maybe, I don't know how you would necessarily fix that besides providing with opportunities to maybe, communicate with people outside of his division who may have backgrounds that are similar to his that he feels he can relate to.
But it sounds like his mentor has
Right.
a background. It's
But he
like-
wants his mentor to like, go away so he can still get a job.
But he'd get it over his folks, over his peers who don't have any background.
Yeah.
Something really interesting is that he talks about how he wants to get promoted, but he doesn't really give like a very convincing reason. It's just like, oh, I want my mentor's job, but there's no sense of, he doesn't really identify with the organization and he doesn't like the people around him, yet he assumes that by moving up, he'll be happier. Maybe that's his assumption.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. It's a big assumption. It isn't always true.
It doesn't say anything about pay here either.
Career counselor and first an entry-level career counselor potential doesn't pay a ton. Program coordinator. That's like entry-level, I think.
Sounds very appealing.
He dreads going to work every day. That's pretty. He should just quit.
Seriously. That's pretty useful.
For this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you dread going to work every day, that's not good.
Right. And it's not, that anything different. There's complaints like they're basically,
So I say he's not gonna stay.
He's what?
He's not gonna stay.
and maybe they're not.
Yeah, I would agree.
Maybe they're not motivated. Maybe they're not actually motivation.
Yeah, and maybe what needs to change is he needs to find a new job. So, can we say well, we need like a essential oil diffuser or some type of deodorizer. I mean, it's interesting that you say dreads going to work, and the only real, they mentioned smells and HVAC issues. But to see dread going, to me, that's.
I mean, if you had to go sit in a place that was smelly and cold, it'd be pretty awful. So you go to your fancy heat office. Nothing like your office.
I so don't have a fancy
Nothing like your office.
I had to open my window today. It was too hot.
And she would challenge.
Yeah.
and she would want that. So that she would her kind of motivation level to be a lot more.
But maybe she doesn't want to
move on to one.
Right.
I'm
So
pretty
then
sure
that's
that's motivation.
Yeah.
Right,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, like Maslow and the ERG thing are essentially the same thing.
Like, why do you need to do things I don't want to do?
That's what she said. Right.
That's just
Doing good work? Yeah. You know,
like
it's
it's
not
I guess Herzberg also talks about a lot of the things that he's confronting.
she's not motivated, but motivation doesn't really matter because
What he's dissatisfied about, interpersonal relationships, working conditions.
because any little like.
Does it say hygiene? So I guess that maybe the smells can be attributed to poor hygiene.
But then they change that.
You need to do a secret Santa and buy everyone a bar of soap.
And she becomes the kind of time it's the same thing. Then they should motivate.
I think like maybe one thing I would like to see younger to see like develop.
I mean, they're, I think all three are so close to one another that it's hard to.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look each one separately, I think it's essentially the same.
Same outcome.
Yeah, you know, and I don't know. I don't know if each theory individually would say something different about in terms of what we need to change to fulfill.
So we all agree that he needs to leave his job. That's okay.
I mean, the odds certainly seem stacked against him.
No, but honestly, given the conditions, there's no other solution because he doesn't like the people around him. So even if he gets promoted, I don't think he has, unless he fires everybody.
Right. And the only person that he likes is the one whose job he wants.
Right, who has to leave maybe. Or it's like,
There's no probability of promotion.
2 more minutes?
Or likelihood.
Or is everybody ready? Ready? Are you guys ready?
so it's just no case studies.
Okay, we do need 2 minutes.
Case 3 is interesting.
I'm sure she will.
Everyone, I'm going to send around the attendance sheet as well.
That's what I'm just waiting for.
Okay. All right, everyone. Let's go ahead. Should we mix it up and start with case 4? Yes? Okay. Case 4? So we have 2 groups doing case 4, maybe? All right, so would somebody read the case?
Program.
Go ahead.
Okay, a program coordinator in a career center dreads going to work each day. The office smells strange and is either too hot or too cold. They don't have a permanent office for him. He rotates a cubicle depending on who is in that day. His supervisor is a micromanager. The other program coordinator and counselors don't have a background in higher ed, and he feels like they just can't relate. He has a mentor who is an assistant director, and he really likes the possibility of moving up into that position. While he feels limited in his influence at the program coordinator level, his mentor has control over the development of the major program for the year, Career Week. He is working really hard to get promoted.
Okay, great. So, so what theory did you choose?
We chose Maslow.
Okay, Maslow. And what theory did you choose?
Kind of
ERG. Okay, good. So they'll work nicely together. All right. So, So how did you use Maslow? Let's use Maslow. We'll have you guys maybe work on the process theory when we do that. Okay. How did you use Maslow to understand this?
Well, kind of in our conversations, we were switching back and forth, we talked about, well, I mean, more psychological. He doesn't like his coworkers. He doesn't get along. You know, talking about safety, this kind of overlaps with the ERG, but just the smell and the HVAC system in the office, which is very good. You know, personal space issue. So that's all leaning towards the low motivation levels.
Okay. Yeah.
When we talked also about the from like belonging and the ability to self-actualize, whatever. That you know, he was the only one in the office with a higher ed background. He didn't really feel like he got along with the other folks in the office, and he didn't really feel like there was much for him there. The job he wanted was the only person that he really gets along with in the office is the person whose job he wants. It was just a very bizarre dynamic where it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of opportunity there for him to really be comfortable. And the safety needs to, I mean, not necessarily safety in the sense of like security, but safety is just very uncomfortable going to work every day. I mean, it opens with these dreads going to work every day. That was very telling for us.
Yes, yeah. So what's interesting is, so I think we're pretty low here, right? We're perhaps, if you talk about safety broadly as in sort of physical needs, right? Perhaps pretty low here. Oh, I always forget this is a touch screen. Okay. In terms of belonging, you brought up the fact that he's the only one who's in this particular field. And the esteem and self-actualization also not really being pushed. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we get to the process theory, right? Because there's some aspects of that perhaps there, but in terms of needs. So how likely is he, do you think, to stay?
Not very. I mean, our recommendation was that he quit.
Okay, good. Okay, so you would actually, in fact, say, not the right position for you.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, case 2, or sorry, case 3. Would someone mind reading case 3? We'll only read it once for needs and process, but just to give everybody kind of a background to your person, to your case. All right.
Assistant registrar has been in her position for 7 years. She absolutely loves her office. The entire staff is very collegial, and she feels supported both personally and professionally. She lives in a nice home just outside of campus and can walk to work each day. She knows exactly how to do her job and plans to do exactly that. Her supervisor is completely hands-off, trusts that she's doing what she needs to do well, but also doesn't push her. She doesn't really have thoughts about the future or likes where she is right now.
Okay. So what theory did you use?
ERG.
ERG. And what did you find?
Not bad.
Not bad?
Yes, I'm sorry.
While Matt's looking for it, we found that her her physical needs, her safety, her working conditions were met. So we gave that a check plus.
Excellent, yeah.
Her R's were met in that her relationships with coworkers were met. She was very happy there, so we gave her a check plus in that. And then her G's, her growth. I guess we had a lot of debate about whether she wanted to grow, whether growth would then make her spiral downwards and scare her, or that would be a negative. And I don't know. Do you want to? Anyone else want to?
I thought that she was going to get bored at some point. You keep doing the same job over and over again. And James also mentioned that, in our group, that someone's been in their job for 20 years and they seem to be completely satisfied. But I would think that if one person is kind of left to their own devices, does the same job day in day out, year over year, will eventually get bored and somewhat dissatisfied with their job.
We also talked about how maybe for her to grow or to want to grow, she would need to be pushed by her boss. But then we thought that maybe that could backfire, and maybe she doesn't want to be pushed, and having someone to push her might make her feel like, okay, she's not relating anymore to her boss. She, you know, her needs are not being met anymore. So the likelihood of her staying might not be so high.
So this is really interesting. I actually think you all are sort of taking these questions to the next step by part of what you're doing is critiquing the theory, right? To say, is it really, is it always the case that people are going to have a growth mindset, right? Sometimes people may not have a growth mindset, and so what would it mean for a person to be thrown into a work environment where there was a push for growth if they didn't have that kind of mindset? Which I think is an interesting critique of this particular theory. But I do think too that, so, you know, I really do like to kind of separate sort of motivation versus satisfaction versus staying, right? So we see that her E and her R's are met fully, right? I heard check pluses. So the idea that she's probably going to stay is, you know, is pretty clear. So if you're trying to retain staff, they're doing really well. But then I wonder about the motivation piece, right? So do you think they're getting the most out of her as a staff member?
I was thinking that she's not motivated, but I don't think she needs to be, because everyone is happy. Like, she's happy at her job. Her boss is happy of her doing her job, and she's happy with the results. So she may not be motivated to, you know, to grow or just motivated, whatever. She's just happy doing what she's doing. Having lack of motivation wasn't a problem.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So perhaps part of it depends on the organizational context, right, and the organizational needs. So combining, so doing cross-frame analysis, right? So combining with last week when we talked about cybernetic institutions, right? Where, you know, they're really good at identifying problems, but not good at pushing, right? Not good at necessarily pushing forward with innovative thinking. Perhaps this kind of person would do perfectly, right? She's very stable, she does her job well, people are satisfied with exactly what she does, right? But there isn't necessarily, you know, she may not be the next president of that organization with the massive insights as to how to take this place to the next level, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, other thoughts? Yeah, Amy, and then Brooke.
Well, just on that growth thing, actually now, you know, thinking about just some organizations, you literally can't grow people if you want to. You know, someone gets into a position and that's the only job that, like, we can't give you a promotion, we can't, you know, take on more responsibility, you're not gonna get recognized. So if you like intrinsic reward, that's fine. But, you know, if you want a title or salary or recognition, you're not gonna get any of that. So you could argue that, like, actually creating, you know, someone that wants that growth mindset could end poorly for everyone, like Jinsu was saying.
So again, so it goes back to the fact that the growth mindset may not be right for every person or every context. That there might be some context where that isn't appropriate. Although, again, I think the question around what does growth look like, you know, so does growth always look like the next position? Is it possible that they could expand their current role or think really differently about their current role, or just use their current role to think about their own life? Or, you know, there's different kinds of self-actualization possibilities. Yeah.
The one thing that I thought kind of figured into this also, she was very happy with the relationships with the people around her, but that's not guaranteed. So one thing that, you know, that's not really taken into consideration is what if there's a change in leadership or other people leave and then there's changes in the dynamics within the group. Then there's kind of a new kind of fresh eyes on how we're doing our business, what we're doing here, how we're going about the work. And if you're kind of fixed in how you go about doing your work every day, and you're not open to maybe change, which it sounds like this person may not be, and hasn't been challenged to do so, it can be really difficult.
So perhaps the connection between the ERG theory and retention is contingent upon all the factors staying exactly as they are, right? That changing context would then change the ERG, right? So then R would be low, which then would have an effect on retention at that time.
I also think it depends on the person's values. Like what do you value more? Like, do you value more the growth, or do you value more your own personal comfort?
Yes. Yeah, so again, this is an interesting critique of the theory, because what the theory would say is, in order to get to that growth mindset, you need to have the physical piece met, right? It says that it's very, very difficult to sustain a growth mindset without having the E and the R in place. But it's possible, perhaps, that depending on the individual characteristics and the individual needs, that maybe that might look different. Okay, I want to get to the process theories, so we're going to have these two groups share their cases for the process theories. Okay? Oh, 3. Great. So now we're going to use any one process theory, and I'll put the process theories up here to explain the same thing. And what would the theory say needs to be changed? I'll give you 5 to 7 minutes on this one, because now you know the case.
It's interesting, the last sentence is working really hard to get promoted. I'm not disagreeing, it just...
There may be some element of...
Yeah. Even just in his head. Like
in the case it says he likes the possibility of moving on, and he's working hard to get it.
Right.
So he likes their award and he's working towards it, which sort of goes to that theory too.
Yeah.
Suppose it's not clear as the palatine. How well they really get this.
Right. It almost seems like it's a crapshoot. That is, if that's truly his only avenue for promotion, is whether or not that person happens to leave or not. Although he's in the student affairs arena, so there might be other opportunities for him within the institution outside of career development, career center, whatever that's called.
Do you think there's an element of equity theory in there because he's constantly trying to, implicitly assess himself against other people in his organization? Like, oh, I look up to this one guy for whatever reason because he occupies a very lofty position, and then he compares himself with the other people he doesn't really. Again, this is a very brief case study, so we can't really get too much out of it, but I think there is an element of me comparing myself against others, and where do I fit in? I think I fit, I deserve the seat of my supervisor. So I think there's
the background, he doesn't relate to the other because they don't have the degree.
Exactly, so he's making these distinctions.
Yeah, I see that definitely. I mean, for the expectancy theory, yeah, I mean, there would have to be, to maximize his potential for what he wants, there'd have to be a clear line of
potential job.
Yeah, promotion. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, or at least an acknowledgement, I suppose, that if person X were to leave, you'd be a candidate for the job. Those career center people jump jobs all the time.
These theories are very interesting themselves. Goal-oriented, feels very pre-modern. Like seeking promotions just for the sake of being promoted.
Yeah,
So I mean, like this assumption that you want
Right.
no discussion. So, like for the registrar, like, extraordinary quality of life. I mean, I know there's a discussion of needs, but there's this whole world. I know this is work focused, and then I guess some of them take into account like a social justice orientation. Like, what are you doing at work? Like, what are you getting done, and what's the result? Not for you or even your organization necessarily, but in the world.
We don't get any of that though in case 4.
No.
He's very. I would have.
But it does, another interesting thing is how social media has changed a lot. We're talking about like promotion for the sake of promotion. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who was saying how down on himself he was because he logs onto Facebook and sees these people that he went to high school with, and they're all posting, the job that they have, their families, the kids that they have, and it's constantly in your face. And if you haven't met your own goals in life, you're sometimes can be constantly bombarded by people who maybe, even if they're not happy, you don't have access to that information. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The methods by which promotion is recognized are changing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then you have to change your LinkedIn status, your Facebook status.
It's also quite interesting. I'm not sure if you guys got this. It's a little ironic that he works at a career center when he can't get it together.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
But so for personal work hours, low absenteeism term, we've been there a long time.
I want to know where she's
High satisfaction at work, high quality performance.
No what?
where this is getting.
Like I said earlier, I feel like this is probably case 1. Do any of you guys working in career schools? You do communication.
And student affairs.
For which school here?
College and engineering.
Okay, undergrad. And I know you work at the law school. In which area?
In our public interest, because I'm orientation external. So what can you accomplish for?
All right, 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes, please.
Of course I know.
So this is
Yeah, I have an issue with him making it going to work every day.
And he's a career counselor.
I dread is serious words.
It's also interesting in this that what it seems like he wants is control over something and doesn't
All right, how are we
necessarily
doing?
talk about any advising for student direction or career advising.
You guys ready? Or need another minute or 2? Well, we'll do it on the fly. Okay. All right. All right, so let's hear from case number 2. Would somebody be willing to read case number 2?
A housing director at Columbia knows he's lower paid in comparison to his peers in other institutions. He lives in a tiny apartment, which is very different from the house that he lived in when he was an assistant director of student activities at the University of Texas. He really likes his colleagues and feels valued. They're constantly asking him to make big decisions about the direction of the unit. He has a supervisor who pushes him to reflect on his professional self. He is often up late hours because of the duty schedule, and then is required to be very focused on his senior level responsibilities and meetings during the day. He feels like he's getting a lot out of this job, but he keeps his eye on the door with it, and feels a bit burnt out.
All right, so which process theory did you choose?
So we originally narrowed it down to job characteristics and equity theory, but we ended up going with equity theory because he consistently makes comparisons to his previous position, his previous department, for instance, at his current department, his comparison to the pay of what he's getting and what other institutions, other people at other institutions are receiving. And so we thought that the whole fairness factor was super in there, and him not feeling like he was unfair.
Okay, great. No, that I think that's a good choice because this is one of the, I mean, this case has those comparison pieces, right? And one of the things we know about equity theory is that it's the level of the salary, for example, is much less important than the comparative fairness of the salary, right? So, or another example is the level of the satisfaction is less important than the comparative, the relative satisfaction across colleagues, right? Or the reward structure, for example.
Right, and he also didn't like overtly say, I don't like my salary, I feel undervalued. He didn't say that, but you can kind of get to that conclusion based on what he's saying, but he really focused on the comparisons.
Okay, great. So what do you think, what does this have to do with his motivation, satisfaction, and retention?
Well, I guess that we kind of saw this as, well, I guess before we discussed this our last time, we discussed that in the ERG theory, he was really strong in the R and the G, but his E was kind of where we wanted some more information to make a different, like we weren't really sure, we didn't really feel qualified, I guess, to make a decision based on some of the things we were getting from there. But I think that we saw a relationship between the E and the ERG theory and this equity because that was where we kind of saw some space where perhaps he could feel more